Harry Kim is Voyager's most enthusiastic and most underappreciated officer. He can be brilliant, sweet, and downright heroic at times. Despite all of that, he is rarely lucky in love or in work. In this live stream, we will count down the 10 best Harry Kim episodes from Star Trek Voyager. So grab your clarinet and your new trill spots, and let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things Star Trek. And today we are going to be talking about the life and loves of somewhat tragic Harry Kim. Now, I will say this is one of my favorite characters in Star Trek, and Voyager is one of my favorite shows. So most of the characters are my favorites. Although Tuvok and Neelix have fallen low on the list over the last few years. But in any case, I freaking love Harry Kim. I think he's really sweet. I think he's got this really naive, kind of endearing innocence to him. And I just feel like he never got a break, right? He just never got to win. That being said, we're going to review the 10 best episodes that are kind of focusing around Harry Kim. And it's a little bit of a cheat because I don't even think he has 10 full episodes that are about him. I think he has closer to 7 or something like that. But we're going to talk about 10 episodes. And I will say right off the bat, how even though I love this character, I don't super love all of the episodes surrounding him. But with that being said, let's get to the first episode on the list. And by the way, there are timestamps below. So if you're watching on the replay, you can skip ahead at any time. Season 1, Episode 7, Eye of the Needle. The crew discovers a micro wormhole that surprisingly connects to the Alpha Quadrant. After making contact with a Romulan scientist on the other side, they agree to use the wormhole to send Voyager's crew home. Unfortunately, they learn that the Romulan is from 20 years in the past. So instead, they give him their personal messages to deliver in his future. Unfortunately, he dies 2 years before Voyager disappears, and they don't know if the messages were ever delivered. Okay, so this episode is not about Harry Kim at all. But what I love about him in this episode is this is where we see this boundless enthusiasm, right? So they discover this micro wormhole. They figure out that they can actually transport things back and forth through this tiny little wormhole. I think they even said it was something like 4 centimeters wide or something ridiculous. It was really tiny. But when you're being transported, you're transported as particles of light, basically. So you could squeeze through and fit. But when they discovered that they could beam back, but it was 20 years in the past, Janeway et al. Were like, okay, well, this isn't going to work, right? Because if we transport back, it's going to mess up the timeline and we can't, stop ourselves from leaving. Otherwise, we won't be here. Time paradox and all of that. But Harry was like, let's just do it. I think it can work. We'll go back in time and we'll just hide out on some little island or something like that. And then 20 years from now, we'll be like, surprise, we're back. And I think it could work. And everyone's like, Harry, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. But I loved that he was so enthusiastic and just so willing to try, and that he was that voice of dissent, because I kind of agree, in their situation, where you're 70 years away from home. By the time you get back, everyone you know and love will be dead. We're assuming you yourself are going to survive for an additional 70 years to even get back. You're going to be super old and decrepit despite future technology. And you're going to finally, it's like you're going to lay eyes on your home world right before you die, which is super sad. Or you can go back right now, but 20 years ago, which to me, just knowing what I know about sci-fi is always a bad idea. What island are they supposed to be hiding on, right? How are they possibly not going to contaminate the timeline? How are they possibly not going to interact with their past selves or find some way to sneak off this hidden moon they're on to go back home? Because they still would have to wait 20 years before they can be with their family. So it wouldn't be 70 years, but it'd be 20 years. And then they would show up the day after they disappeared, but they'd be 20 years older, which is going to really just put a monkey wrench in all of these different things. Like, for example, Janeway was engaged. Harry seemed pretty serious about his girlfriend. And now you come back and you're 20 years, older. That could be a problem. Anyways, I love his enthusiasm. Hold on a second. We have some Earl Grey. Okay. I love his enthusiasm. And he even said himself, on his podcast called The Delta Flyers, where he and Tom, the actor who played Tom Paris, they both talk about behind the scenes of what happened on the show. And they finished, so I think now they're in Deep Space Nine. But anyways, he was talking about these beginning episodes, and he was talking about the pilot. And he was saying, the actor who plays Harry Kim, Garrett Wong, he was like, how would you describe me to the actor who plays Tom Paris, Robert Duncan McNeil. And he was just like, well, I mean, you were kind of. And then he's like, would you call me maybe Ensign Eager? And he was like, yes, I would call you that. So he was very self-aware that the actor, the character he was portraying of this like super hopeful, like chipper young dude was actually how he felt. Like he is legitimately a sci-fi fan. And he's also a huge Star Trek fan. Garrett Wang is. So when he got this role, he was like legitimately amped. He was so excited. And so all of this like bubbly enthusiasm you see, at least in season 1, was legitimate. I think you see a lot less of the bubbly enthusiasm by season 7. I think that's also legitimate because I don't know how excited he was about the show at that time. And granted, it's been like 7 years. So, you know, things do get old. Anyways, I'm going to check the chat and then we're going to hit the next episode on the list. Hello to everybody who's here live. Hello to everybody who's watching on the replay. If you don't want to see this part in the replay, skip ahead to the next thing. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, the final countdown. Love that song. So fun. Harry Kim and the Kim Tones. Harry Kim, unlucky in love and in everything else. But better luck in love than Geordi. Very true. So true. So true and so sad. Like, why is that? Why do they have to have one character who's like great with the ladies and then one character who's just like a total dweeb? We can't have some kind of in between. I guess maybe Data was the neutral. He's like, you know, he had one hookup with Yar, one girlfriend who was crazy. And other than that, he's pretty good. And he sort of hooked up with the Borg Queen, but like the Queen is very seductive. She would hook up with anybody. Nadia says, I had such a crush on Harry Kim when I was a kid. So did I, which is funny because like as an adult, I don't know if I would date Harry Kim. We talked about this last week where we said, was this even on my, no, this is on Buffer Time at Best of Trek, Worst of Trek. We were talking about, for some reason, I don't even remember the context, but we were talking about, would you rather marry or date like Harry Kim or Tuvok? And I don't know why we're talking about this, but I was like Harry Kim all day, every day. And even though I said that, which I still, if that was my choice, I still stand by that. However, I don't know if I would really date Harry Kim at this time in my life. He seems a little too naive and sweet. Like maybe he hasn't seen enough of the world to have a bit of realism, but I do love his hopeful optimism and we would be really great friends. I'd probably put him in the same friend zone as Geordi. Opinions no one cares about. Janeway told him how impressed she was with his work in Twisted. Clearly, she was just blowing smoke. Yeah, she was impressed, but not impressed enough to promote him, which is really funny because I think I personally would not have made such a big deal about him never being promoted if he did not have the rank of ensign. If he had been literally anything else, and that never changed throughout the whole show, I would not have even noticed. It's just because he's ensign. Because if you think about it on TNG, Wesley went from like not even an ensign to an acting ensign to like the academy. There was some kind of growth. Ensign Rowe got promoted. You know what I mean? It's like the only ensigns who didn't get promoted are like Ensign Gates or some character who doesn't have any lines. You know, some extra who doesn't really have any lines. But this is like a main bridge crew character who is an ensign, but somehow still in the bridge crew, and then stays an ensign for 7 years. That's nuts. That is nuts. Nadia says, he was pretty lucky when he and Chakotay didn't die when Voyager crashed into that glacier, although the crash was his fault. What was that, Timeless? Yes, it was Timeless, and we are going to be talking about that episode because I love that episode. Hold on. Opinions no one cares about says, no, Harry, we can't do the plot of the 2009 Trek reboot. That hasn't happened yet. Time travel. Hi, Carlos. Yeah, there's only one way they could go back and not mess anything up. Chronotons. When Grace says, 80 just stasis it out. Yes, you know what? That's true. That's true. Then probably accidentally over. So when Grace is saying, well, if they had gone back 20 years in the past, they could have just like gone into stasis, which is true. And then they wouldn't show up 20 years older than they were when they left. That is true. And it is also true, and Grace, what you said, that if they had gone into stasis for 20 years, so that way they would wake up the day after they left, and then they'd be the same age with like no new memories, somehow they would manage to oversleep by 1,000 years. That would absolutely happen. And they would come back to Earth and they'd be like overrun with the Borg or something. And they'd be like, oh man. So like, and suddenly they're like chilling with the crew of the Discovery, and you just like don't know what's going on. And they're like, we should have just taken the long way. Yes, that was really fun. So Nadia's like, it must have been the choose your own adventure thing. If you go over to Best of Trek, Worst of Trek on YouTube, we just did a choose your own adventure game through Lower Decks. It was super fun. So if you're watching on the replay, definitely go check that out because it's just fun. PS2 Chipper says, you also see a lot less of Chakotay by season 7. We do see a lot less of Chakotay, and we see a lot less of pretty much everyone because Paramount Plus was really trying to reboot the franchise with 7 of 9. So they tried to make her like the main character in every single episode, or the main B plot in every single episode, which is wild. So you get a lot less of everybody else, but like, I think they were successful. I love 7 of 9. So their whole plan to make us love her at least worked on me. Let's see. Geordi didn't get a space STD. Are we sure about that? We don't have, you remember that episode? What was that episode called when he changed into that like invisible alien? Identity Crisis. So that was that like, what was it? I want to say Tarkanian, something like that, some kind of virus. We never found out exactly how that virus was spread. So I'm just saying. Crazy Normie says, Harry's like me, 30 and never gets promoted anymore. Oh, yep. Nog got promoted before Kim did, right? And Nog was a child when he started on the show. Goodness gracious. Yeah, his gamer tag was, I think, Forever Ensign or something like that. Okay, let's go to the next episode on the list. Season 1, Episode 9, Emanations. Harry Kim is accidentally transported to an alien afterlife where he shocks the locals by proving that their version of death isn't what they thought. While Voyager scrambles to get him back, the aliens struggle to reconcile their beliefs with Harry's presence. Eventually, he teams up with a local who helps him return to Voyager. So this is another one of those meh episodes. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek did this 12-hour-long live stream where he was ranking all of the episodes of Star Trek ever from best to worst, like all the 10 bajillion episodes. I don't even know how many episodes there are. There's got to be just an unlimited number in my estimation. And I wonder if this episode made the list because it's so like forgettable. I don't know. It's just, however, that being said, this is, it's not the first Harry Kim focused episode. I think it is the second. Yeah, it's the second. The first one was one I didn't even put on this list because it's just blah, but it's one where he like wakes up in some alternate timeline, some alternate reality where he did not get the job on Voyager. So he wakes up in San Francisco or something like that, and he's living his best life on Earth, but Voyager has been lost in the Delta Quadrant. And he's like, I have to get back to my people. I'm in the wrong time. And he meets the alien who was responsible for this accident that stranded him in the wrong timeline where he was like happy, healthy, and safe. And he's like, send me back. And the guy's like, no, just be happy here. And somehow he convinced them to send him back. So I didn't even add that episode because, it's like going back in time and it's not really that interesting and exciting. Anyways, this is our second time seeing Harry and it's better. This is better than that, but it's also kind of forgettable. But here's what I like about it though. And here's one of the reasons why I love Trek in general and sci-fi is I love that they're talking about the afterlife and spiritual practices of other aliens. Like what could that look like? What could the cultural arrangements look like? What could the funerals look like? It's very interesting. So in this episode, they found the ship detected some kind of energy source they hadn't seen before. So when they were investigating the caverns, they found bodies everywhere. And they were all wrapped up in this like cobweb-like substance. And they just found these tunnels just full of bodies. And they're like, what is this? And they realized, okay, this is some kind of burial ground. So I don't know if anything in their mind said, this is sacred space and we shouldn't be here. I don't know. But before they got a chance to really figure all that out, a vacuole opened and they were like, beam us out right away. And when they beamed them out, somehow Harry got trapped and then he was swapped for the dead body. which is terrifying. And the body ended up on Voyager. They revived her because, of course, whatever she died from is something that Voyager could easily fix. And then she was horrified because she was like, this is the afterlife? Aliens on a spaceship? Like she was so bummed. So anyways, she ends up dying again and going back to that cavern. They get Harry back. And in the end, which is, I think, very true of a lot of episodes like this that kind of explore religion from the perspective of other aliens, is at the end, it just kind of makes the crew go, how interesting, right? Just gives them food for thought. And that's kind of what happened here. So when Harry gets back and all is well, he's talking to Janeway, I think, and he's just like, man, it's kind of a bummer that all of these people on this planet think that when they are sent to, it's called the final emanation, hence the awful title of this episode, when they are sent to the final emanation, they actually enter into some like state of an afterlife where they can spend time with each other or whatever. And in reality, they're just being shoved into these caves and there's nothing. That's such a bummer. And Janeway says, well, actually, remember that whole energy thing that we were talking about before? Well, the rings around this asteroid belt, which is like what brought them in to investigate, are actually full of neuronal energy, like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of like individual discrete pieces of neuronal energy all communing together. So she was like, so maybe that really is the emanation. And we can tell that neuronal energy is coming from the bodies. So it's like they're trying to imply that somehow that whatever their belief system is, it's accurate. Like even if it's kind of draped in all of this other ritual, that is accurate, which I think is just kind of fun and nice. Like I'm glad they didn't just completely negate these people's beliefs, but they found a way to justify it while also leaving Harry to be like, how interesting, food for thought. So it's nice to see. I can't really say character growth because again, this was episode 9. So we're not going to see a ton of character growth in season 1. We've still got like so many more seasons to go. But I do love that Harry got an episode. I do think it is an interesting concept for an episode. I don't think it's the most memorable episode in the history of episodes, though. Okay, I'm going to check the chat, and then we're going to go to the next episode on the list. Oh, and by the way, Opinions No One Cares About is doing, okay, so Opinions No One Cares About says, that means I promoted myself in Fortnite before he got promoted. That's funny. 104 times Harry dies on Voyager and he never got promoted. I think though dying is maybe not a promotable thing. Maybe that's like not how you get the promotion. I'm not really sure. But anyways, Opinions No One Cares About is currently doing a 1-minute summary of every single episode of Voyager. And let us know in the chat what episode you're up to now, because I don't remember. But if you want to know what happens really quickly, if you need a reminder of what's going on in these episodes, he's doing a recap of every single episode of Voyager and has already done recaps of all the shows that came before Voyager. And I'm guessing the commitment is to do recaps of all the shows after. So he's going to be doing these for a while. PS2 Chipper says, I will break some good news at the end of the show about Harry Kim. Ooh, but now we have to wait to the end of the show. Opinions No One Cares About says non sequitur. Yeah, that's the name of that really dumb episode. Oh, that's the short you're putting up tonight. Yeah. Okay, well there you go. If you want a review of that episode, it'll be up tonight. And if you're watching on the replay, it's already up. So you can go to @Opinions No One Cares About on YouTube and check that out. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, this episode is a rare moment of philosophy in Trek. Not the best episode, but different. Exactly. And that's what I love, though. I love that Trek gives us moments like that. Moments of philosophy or religion or social discourse or things like that. Like, I enjoy being able to have those thoughts and conversations. And sometimes when the episode is not great, it feels like it provides less opportunity for those conversations. For example, there's an episode in TNG where Beverly is, I forget the name of this episode, but she's kidnapped by some terrorists and they try to convince her that terrorism is like for the greater good or something. And then she's eventually rescued. And like, that's the whole episode. And you're just kind of like, and I think the terrorist falls in love with her and he's like making sketches of her. And he's like, I'm not a bad guy. I'm just doing what I have to do or whatever. And I'm not really sure if the episode was supposed to make us understand or sympathize with terrorists or humanize terrorism. I'm not really sure where it was going with that episode. But again, it's like, this is like an interesting idea. Like, I see where you were going. And this could have become a springboard for some really interesting conversation. But since the episode itself was kind of like, blah, I don't even know what to say about it. Like, you didn't give me enough to like take that next step. But I do like the effort. I do like the trying, because that's what makes it different. That's what makes it, it spices it up. It changes it up a little bit. Windgrace says, I like the general idea of this episode, but it's not that interesting. I agree. Robert says, I wish Harry had been baptized Dur. Dur? Did you miss a word? Or more baptized, like baptized Dur? Carlos says that the 1 minute shows are funny. So that's I think about opinions no one cares about, that those 1 minute summaries are really funny. Best of Trek, Worst Trek says dumb. I love non sequitur, but I'm sure you'll be getting into it in a bit. Yeah, I won't be getting into it. Higher Ground, that is the name of it. Yes. That episode was crazy. Yeah, terrorism is a swell time, Bevs. Give it an afternoon. Yeah, it was just kind of like, I don't know. It was very similar to this one where I'm like, I see where you were going and I don't know if you got there. Like, it seemed like there was some really interesting idea there, and then it just like didn't get off the launch pad. Opinions no one cares about says 1 of 6 TNG episodes in a row with a title starting with the. Yeah, I'm not. It's funny. You would notice that because you did every episode in order. It's the kind of thing I would never notice. PS2 Chipper says, what year was that episode? I have no idea. Do you mean the terrorism episode? I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that question about any of it. Like, what year was any of these episodes? I have no idea. Okay, let's see. Okay, with that done, let's go to the next episode on the list. Season 3, Episode 20, Favorite Son. Harry starts experiencing strange genetic memories that lead him to an alien planet that he's told is his actual homeworld. At first, it seems like a dream come true, but he soon learns the women of this species lure men in to kill them and use their genetic material to sustain their population. So I legitimately love this episode. Like, I love this episode. This is probably one of my favorite Harry Kim episodes, and I should have put it higher on the list because I'm going a little bit chronological, but I'm leaving my favoriteest episodes at the end. The reason why I did is because it's so weird, right? It's just such a weird episode, but I should have put it higher because I really, truly love it. I love the science of it. I love the idea of it, which is so like wild. It is a little bit like Identity Crisis, where there's this virus that infected Geordi and changed all of his physiology and turned him into this like invisible alien you can only see under UV light, change all his behaviors and all of these things. That's not how viruses work, by the way, but so interesting. And so in this episode, they also talk about genetic memory, which is a legit thing. And it's so fascinating. So Harry gets infected by this virus, but they don't know that at the time. And the virus starts changing all of his DNA. But instead of turning him into an invisible alien who can't talk, he starts developing, physiological changes like the spots and all of that, but also like actual memories. So in the very beginning of this episode, there is like they're being hailed by this alien ship, and Harry sees them and he's like, they're charging weapons, they're going to attack. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? They're not charging weapons. They're totally harmless. They're just having a conversation about like, we welcome you in peace or whatever the heck they said. And then Harry locks everybody out and just starts like firing torpedoes or whatever. The ship gets damaged, and I don't think it gets destroyed though, but I think it's damaged or disabled or who knows what. They get in a firefight. B'Elanna gets hurt. And then when this is all over, Janeway is like, what did you just do? Right. And Harry's like, sorry, Mom. And later on, he like comes to apologize, and he's like, I'm very sorry, ma'am. They probably weren't charging weapons. I don't know why I thought that. And after Tuvok's investigation, Janeway's like, actually, they were charging weapons. You were right. How did you know that? And he's like, oh my gosh, I knew it. He had memories of these people, and he knew they were bad and they were after him and they were to be avoided and not to be trusted. And then he was like, as they're going on, the ship brings back up and all these other ships keep attacking. And then he goes, I know where we need to go. We need to go to this one planet in this one system. It's called Teresia. We'll be safe as long as we can get there. And so now they're like racing to get to Teresia, and they get there and they cross the, they have some kind of like, force field around the planet. So they cross that barrier, the force field goes up, and then the other aliens can't get through. So they're like, yay, you saved us. And they tell him this whole story about how Harry Kim is actually Teresian, and his father, the males, the reason why there's no men on the planet is because all the males take their DNA and kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy and just like spread their DNA all over the universe. And then their offspring are like they have also this knowledge of, or this like desire to do space travel, which is how they end up finding their way back here. Anyways, just all of it is so interesting. Like, because, okay, so genetic memory is like a thing. I mean, I don't think we've seen it in humans, but humans take so long to like go from one generation to the next. But we can see it in animals, right? Where animals, the second they're born, they know what's dangerous, what's safe, what's to eat, what things they can eat, what things they can't. Like there's a lot of things, like a lot of knowledge that can come from these particular animals that are born without their parents around. So like they're born knowing everything they need to know, which is crazy because like humans are born not knowing anything, right? So many ideas that I love. Now, the things that I do find really cringy is the way that the women are just like all over Harry and Tom and all this stuff. And they're just like, love me, take me as one of your wives and all of that. That's super creepy and cringy, but it fits in with this narrative of a planet full of women. And like and their excuse is like, the men are just so rare. There's just so few men and we need every man that we can. And then we find out that they're like cannibalizing these men. They're sucking every single cell out of their bodies to get their genetic material. Which is just wild. This is the whole idea is wild. And then it's like so sad because they get married to 3 women and on their wedding night, they're murdered and drained. They don't even give them like days, weeks, hours. They don't give them any time. They straight up Black Widow these guys. And I don't know, just everything about this I find fascinating. It should have been higher on the list because I really do like this episode. What I love about it as far as Harry's character is he mentions in this episode about how he's the only child of his parents, and they call him their miracle child, right? And they just love this little kid, and they're like, "You're so special, you're so special." And he was like, "I never felt special. I never felt like I earned that devotion, that level of devotion from my parents. So now to find out that they're not really my parents, and I'm really this Teresian, this intergalactic child or whatever, kind of justifies all their faith in me and all their sacrifice for me." So I like that they try to add layers of complexity into this character and like his thoughts about himself. Unfortunately, at the end, when it's like, oh, you're not really Teresian and they were lying to you so they could steal your DNA, it's kind of like, now what? Does he still think that he's not worthy or not smart or not, I don't know. We don't really revisit that ever again. This was our first and last deep conversation about Harry's parents and life, but it was still interesting. Yeah. I don't know. That's all I have to say. Okay, I'm going to check the chat and then we'll go to the next episode on the list. Nadia says, ugh, this episode is so flippin' creepy. Opinions no one cares about says, it ain't me. I'm not some sexy DNA vampire son. Not it. PS2 Chipper says, did Futurama get the idea of Snoo Snoo from that episode? I think Futurama got the idea of Snoo Snoo from, where did they get that from? I don't know. Maybe. They were talking about Amazonian women, and I don't know why they were all into Fry. I forget the details of that. Crazy Normie YT says, that episode was classic Voyager horror. That's funny. I did not put that down on my list of scariest episodes. Cindy says, Harry just wants to be loved, and that's all Harry's ever wanted. Why is it so hard? Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, this one has so many problems for me. I can understand that. It's not, I can understand that. I love it though, because I love a lot of the components. It's like I love a lot of the ingredients of this episode. Let's see. Yes, Cindy says, even if it kills him, he just wants to be loved, even if it kills him. Although he does fight back pretty hard at the end. Opinions no one cares about says, just like Guardians of the Galaxy, is David Hasselhoff involved? Like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, where his dad, Kurt Russell, was like spreading his genetic material all over the galaxy in order to create the perfect godchild or something. PS2 Chipper says, I think there are genetic phobias of certain animals in humans. Genetic phobias. Yeah, I don't think that's genetic. That's phobias in humans are all psychological. They're not genetic. Like there's a reason, like there's a trauma or a trigger or something, but it's not like inherent. So if a baby, like not George of the Jungle. What's that guy? What is that? Like Tarzan. Like Tarzan. If a baby was raised by animals, it would just, which would not happen, it would probably be eaten. But let's just say if it was raised by animals, it would just do whatever the animals did. Like it would be trained to like what they like and not like what they don't like. Um, bye. Yeah, the Jungle Book, exactly. Watch out for that tree. Let's see. Like I said, Harry is desperate to be loved. He just wants love. He just wants love. Yes, Trek writer fetish alert. That's the cringy part of this episode, is that it's definitely like you can tell somebody's writing out their fantasy here and throwing it into an episode. Let's see. George of the Jungle is equal to Tarzan. Okay, so then either way. All right, let's do the next episode on the list. Season 3, Episode 14, Alter Ego. Harry falls for a holodeck character named Mariana, but things take a turn when she starts behaving like a real person. Turns out she's actually an alien using the holodeck to interact with Voyager while she's isolated on her own station. Things take a turn after she falls in love with Tuvok and refuses to let the ship leave. So this is another one that is, I don't know, to me, it's memorable because the hologram is real. But other than that, it's kind of like it's another kind of meh episode. But now we have entered into the era of Harry just like losing at love. This is part of that whole saga. The sad thing about this episode is that hologram, not only did he have a big crush on her, which, is whatever, but the sad part is that he told Tuvok about it. And so he felt like Tuvok stole his girlfriend, which that part just kind of breaks my heart. So he comes to Tuvok and he like confides in him. And he's like, I met this girl. She's really cute and da-da-da. And she's a hologram. So, but I still like her. And Tuvok is just like, that is the silliest thing I've ever heard. Like, how are you falling for a hologram? That's ridiculous. This is a programmed thing. And then Harry's like, you just have to meet her. When you meet her, you'll see she's not like any other hologram that I've ever met. There's something about her that feels real. So in that opening scene, when she's oddly asking Harry to touch her calf for some reason, that's when Harry's introducing her to Tuvok to be like, look, like, I want you to talk to her and see what you think. And Tuvok is like, yeah. And later on, she's just enamored with Tuvok from the start. She ends up playing him in a game of Calto, and they end up staying up for hours and talking and all this stuff. And I think at one point, Harry is just like, hey, like he comes in and he's like, hey, I thought we had a date. And she's like, oh, sorry, I forgot. I was with Tuvok or whatever. And he's just like, what the heck, dude? So he confronts Tuvok. He's like, I told you I liked her. And Tuvok's like, I mean, she just wanted to play some Calto. Like, I'm not going to say no. You know what I mean? And Tuvok's pretty aloof, I think, to the fact that she's so into him. But that's the only part that just hurts my heart, is that Harry went to Tuvok in confidence to say, I really like this girl. And then this girl was just like so into Tuvok and like, Harry who? And, sometimes it's like that, dude. Sometimes it's just like that. But then she would not let the ship go because she's like, I will have Tuvok or else. Like, I will not let you go because I must have him. And when Tuvok, I don't know, I don't remember if he beams over to her ship or if she beams him over to her ship. But as they're talking, and she's just like, I have such a connection with you. We have such a good time. Don't tell me you didn't have fun on our date and all this stuff. And Tuvok's like, I'm married. Like, I'm happily married. And yes, it's going to take me 70 years to get back to my boo, but I'm going back to her. Like, I'm not going to hook up with some random alien. And she's like, well, too bad, so sad. You're going to be stuck here with me until you change your mind. And then he finally convinces her, like, maybe it's time for you to go home, because she was on some deep space mission by herself for several years. And he was like, maybe it's time to go ahead and cut this short. Call in your replacement, because clearly you're lonely. If you're going to hijack a ship and kidnap a random guy you met in a holodeck program, you need to go home. And that was the moral of the story. But like, poor Harry, he got his heart broken by someone who did turn out to be real. He was right about that. But she was just not the one for him. Okay, I'm going to check the chat, and then we're going to go to the next episode on the list. Poor thing. Best of Trek, worst of Trek says Tuvok, the most loyal man in history of ever. Right? Like, for some reason, or I won't say from some reason, because you, Best of Trek, worst of Trek, were one of the people who was like, I would totally pick Tuvok over Harry Kim. So people keep falling for Tuvok, and Tuvok keeps being like, no, I'm married. No. So good for him. 70 years, I'll take it. No. And he's like, and I know my wife, I don't even remember. Does he know his wife is going to still wait for him? I think it doesn't even matter. because he's like committed and it just doesn't even matter. Whereas everybody else, like the humans, they're like, okay, honestly, your person's not waiting for you for 70 years. Like that's what Tom tells Harry back in I think the second episode when he's like, let's go hook up with the Delaney sisters. Harry's like, I have a girlfriend. And Tom's like, seriously? Like you're not going to see her anytime soon. She probably thinks you're dead. She has moved on. So should you. And I know that sounds harsh, but I'm on Team Tom here. Granted, they did not end up taking 70 years to get home. But even with the 7 that they took, this is a castaway situation. We think you have died. And if your loved one thinks you have died, you want them to move on. You don't want them to be pining for you for 70 years, right? And you should probably move on too. I guess it's a little different if you're married because like, dang, because you're actually married. So like you actually are cheating, even though they're not cheating because they think you're dead. You're cheating because you know you're not dead. But still, I mean, 70 years, I don't know. Might just have a lot of explaining to do when you get home. Robert says, I think this one is a little more interesting than the previous one in the least. Yeah, I think they're both interesting ideas. I just don't think this episode is just that memorable, but I do think it's an interesting idea. Crazy Normie says, Mariana was oddly sympathetic. Yeah, at the end, when she was just like so sad and lonely and like, I can't let you go, Tuvok. You're like, oh, yeah, you're kind of sad for everybody in that episode. Literally no one wins. Robert says he broke the bro code. Carlos says he should have called dibs or shotgun or something. That's why Tuvok was dating her, because he didn't call dibs. That's funny. Right? Cindy says Tuvok always gets the girls loving on him. Seriously. PS2 Chipper says, what happens during Ponfar? Well, for Tuvok, he gets a holodeck version of his wife. They did one episode when he had Ponfar, and they made a holodeck version of his wife. I don't know if that worked, though. Let me know if you remember how that ended up in the chat, because I do not remember. Cindy says, remember Nos, and Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, Nos was heartbreaking, one-sided relationship. So the sadness continues with the next episode on the list. Season 5, Episode 17, The Disease. Harry falls in love with an alien woman from a generational ship and enters into a forbidden relationship, unknowingly contracting a mysterious illness in the process. At the same time, separatists are sabotaging the generational ship because, unlike their xenophobic relatives, they want to explore space and meet new people. So this is another one that's kind of... I don't know, just so many of these episodes, you're just kind of like, okay. So there's a xenophobic race. That's not new. There's a generational ship. I don't know if we've seen that yet. This might be the only time we actually see that on this show. Maybe this episode is the only time we see a generational ship. Well, no, we see that generational Klingon ship, but that was different because they were pulled into the Delta Quadrant. Anyways, whatever. So in this case, this ship of people, they're all insulated, they're all insular, and the only reason why they're talking to Voyager is because they're having some malfunctions on the ship. And so Voyager is around and can help them fix their ship. So they're like, okay, we'll let you guys help, but like, you know, we're keeping our eyes on you. You know what I mean? Like, don't integrate too much with our people. And so Harry falls in love with this, I think they're called Norby or something like that. I don't know. She falls in love with this woman and they apparently bond for life and they have some kind of chemical bond. And Harry starts like glowing, like literally glowing. And like, maybe it seems like it shocks him or something. And he's like, what's going on? Like, why am I glowing and getting shocked? And so the doctor's scanning him and all this stuff. And the doctor's like, wait a minute. Did you have sexual relations with these aliens? And he was like, it's none of your business, but yeah, I totally did. And the doctor's like, well, you have to ask permission before you do that because of these different biological things that could happen. And he's like, what? Which I also said that. I was like, is this a new policy that you have to ask permission from the doctor? Like, did anybody else on any other ship get this memo? But it turns out that chemical bonding happens with their people when they are kind of like getting married. Like it's like a permanent bond or whatever. And she thought that because Harry was an alien, the bonding wouldn't be possible with him. But it was possible. It just didn't happen however it's supposed to happen because the physiology is a little different. So it was causing him some like pain or discomfort or shocks or something. But not forever. So that's nice. It was temporary. Anyways, the separatists are like, we don't want to be on this generational ship anymore. We want out. So the people who want to leave were allowed to leave. The people who want to stay stayed. They fixed the issues with the ship and all of that. But of course, this woman who wanted to leave, she didn't want to leave so much that she was going to stay on Voyager and be with Harry forever and ever. She still wanted to be with her people, but she wanted to be with her people, like exploring, not with her people, like hiding from everybody. So in the end, even though this was true love, like this wasn't just one side in this case. This wasn't a Mariana situation, okay? Like she clearly loved him. That's the only way the bonding was able to transfer or whatever, is if she truly loved him. So they were both in love, but they were literally going in different directions in their lives. So they broke up, but on good terms. And she went off to do her thing and he went off to go back to Earth, which is sad. And I would say probably of all of his failed love attempts, this one at least had the most potential. I don't know, had the most like two-sided enjoyment, where it wasn't just Harry pining for somebody who couldn't care less, but like they were both equally into it and they just couldn't be together because of external forces, which I agree with. Like it would be silly for her to leave her people and just stay on Voyager forever and ever, because like, what if they fall out of love in 6 months and now she can't get back to her people? I don't know, so I'm not faulting her for that choice, but just, once again, poor Harry. Okay, I'm going to check the chat and then hit the next episode on the list. Hold on. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says Tuvok's holowife got shut down. Oh yeah, that was it. Because of the race that hates holograms. That's what it was, but resumed later and he told Tom she was adequate. That's right. They had created, so I'm guessing it's Tom who created the holographic wife, because he was like losing his mind through this Ponfar situation. And then they were like, what about a holographic version of your wife? And then when he went to start their ritual, they had to shut it all down. And he was like sweating and like couldn't focus. Yeah, he was just going through all kinds of stuff in that episode. Harry got a space STI, but the STI was love. If STIs are love, that's what he got. Exactly. Cindy says for once the girl actually digs Harry, at least. Yeah, at least he got a chance for somebody to just be like equally into him. Wasn't just all in his head. At least he didn't get a wrist ripple, cough, trip, cough. Okay. Nipple. I was like, what is that? And then I was like, what is that? It was the only mutual relationship. We have one more mutual relationship that we're going to talk about in the next episode. Correct. The holographic mate situation didn't work that well for the other Vulcan when he went through Ponfar, so that may be what confused you. Yeah, I just didn't remember what happened with Tuvok's situation. Like, I just didn't remember I just couldn't remember the end of that episode, or even the beginning. Like, I don't remember what that episode was. I just remember that part, that he did go through Ponfar and was losing his mind. Yeah, that other alien, Vorik, the only reason the holographic Vulcan did not work for Vorik is because he was obsessed with B'Elanna. He had already decided B'Elanna was going to be his mate one way or another. So he didn't even try the hologram. He actually pretended like he tried the hologram, but he stole off the ship and then accosted B'Elanna in the woods and was like, she's my mate. So the hologram could have totally worked for him had he given it a fair chance. Okay, now to the next episode on the list. Season 6, Episode 18, Ashes to Ashes. A former Voyager crew member, Lindsay Ballard, mysteriously returns after supposedly dying years earlier. She's alive and well, but she's been resurrected as an alien. She tries to reintegrate into the crew, but her new biology and instincts make it impossible. In the end, she chooses to return to her new alien life. This is yet another episode where I think the science behind it, isn't there, but the science fiction part, like the idea of it, is so interesting. But this episode, once again, is pretty forgettable, at least to me. It's not that memorable of an episode, but such an interesting idea. So here's the idea. This crew member, who only in this episode we discover has ever existed before, died some years ago on the ship somehow, I don't remember. But what they do in Starfleet is when somebody dies and they still have their body, so they weren't like atomized by like a phaser or something like that, they bury them in some kind of space coffin and they shoot them into space. So apparently there's this other alien species that the way that they reproduce is they go and find dead aliens. They just go and find other aliens that have died, and then they science and turn them into one of their species, and then they like raise them as part of their family. So in this case, they found the little pod with Lindsay Ballard's corpse. They reanimated her and turned her into their alien species, and then they adopted her. So that guy who we saw and his wife, they adopted her as their daughter. So they raised her as their daughter for the last several years. And then when she finally got enough autonomy and got a shuttle, or who knows what, she escaped. So the beginning of this episode shows this shuttle like running for its life and this other shuttle shooting at it, which presumably was Lindsay escaping and her parents or something trying to stop her. So when she gets back to Voyager, she's like, it's me. And they're like, it doesn't look like you, because Lindsay apparently was a human. So all of the spots and all of that, they're like, that's not Lindsay. But as the doctor's scanning her, he's like, it's like part Lindsay and part something else now. And so they get this whole explanation about this. Like, she gets another chance at life, but in this whole different culture. And she doesn't want that. She's like, I want my old life. Like, I want to do what I was doing before, which to me is where the problem lies in you kind of scavenging corpses. It's kind of like what the Borg decide to do in season 2 of Picard, of like, we'll just find people who are near death and then like assimilate them. Except for in that instance, they have a choice and presumably keep some sort of autonomy or something. But here it's like they don't have a choice. They just wake up and they're in another body. They're in this alien culture and they're being, raised by some random family. And it's just like, and the family's very much like, you're one of us now. Welcome. Like this wouldn't be shocking and scary and like disturbing for somebody else. So I think it's so interesting, the idea. So I can't say love because I don't super love, but I think it's a really interesting idea of this like resurrected as a different alien. And now you're in a new culture. You have a second choice at life. Like something about that feels like it could be a really powerful story in there. This episode though, again, it's kind of like, meh. Like the actual execution of it is like, okay. So I guess, I don't know, Harry and Lindsay used to be friends. Maybe they were boyfriend and girlfriend at some point, but they were friends. And then when she, in the end of this episode, realizes that she cannot reintegrate, because even though the doctor was able to change her physiology to look human again, like the food that she eats, the human food that she eats tastes like metal, like it's gross. Only the alien food tastes good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like everything she's trying to do to fit into her old life doesn't work anymore because she really is part of this new life. So she decides to go back and breaks Harry's heart, of course, because they like each other. Maybe not as much as on the generational ship where there was like true love, but they do like each other. Like this is like boyfriend girlfriend material. And she's like, Harry, you're really sweet, but I'm going to go live my second life now. So I don't know, like out of 10 being like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. Maybe I give it a 5. It's like, it's pretty okay. I think the idea is very interesting. I think the episode's kind of whatever. And yeah, once again, Harry strikes out. But to your point, Cindy, Harry does find a girl who sort of likes him back in this episode. So there we go. 2 episodes where somebody likes Harry back. I'm going to check the chat and then we'll hit the next episode on the list. Nadia says, I like that actress and the episode is really cool. I wish they had put Ballard in other episodes in order to build that backstory. Yeah, I kind of wish... I mean, clearly they didn't even think about it until this episode. They were like, what if we just have a character come back and let's just say she was there? And they do a bunch of flashbacks in this episode where they're like, remember the birthday party we had for her? And remember the thing we had for her, to kind of like establish that she was there all along. But I like this actress too. And I like this idea. And I think it would have had a lot more impact had this actually been a character from before. Like not Seska, but like that Seska feel, right? Where she kept coming back and you're like, oh, it's Seska. Like that would have been pretty crazy. But it's hard to do because their main bridge crew cast is already so big. To have somebody you actually know and like love, and then they leave and they come back, but they're like a side character, not a main character, is probably pretty hard to write. But I agree with you. I think that would have been much more interesting, and that probably would have packed a bigger punch. But again, this is episodic, so they're not really thinking like, oh, let's bring this character back. They're just thinking, what do we want to do in this one episode? PS2 Chipper says, it feels like Frankenstein's monster from Penny Dreadful. Yeah, because it's like part something and part something else. Nadia says her costume was awesome. I totally agree. I think the monster makeup they did on her, that alien makeup, was gorgeous. Like they did such a good job. And even the way they did like the ridges and stuff, That was beautiful, 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 beautiful. And then when they made her human again, you're like, oh, wait, is that the same person? It was so different, right? And sometimes it's like you can kind of see their face underneath the prosthetics, but this was really legit. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, nothing weird about necroprocreation. You're right, nothing weird at all. It's just sci-fi. Cindy says, yes, Lindsay was an awesome alien. Nadia says, oh man, I wonder how they explain it to her family when they get back to the Alpha Quadrant. They probably just tell her that she died. Yeah, folks either died or made it back, but Lindsay is still there. They probably didn't tell them that. That'd be my guess, because technically that Lindsay, like that alien Lindsay, is not Lindsay. In fact, and I don't remember what they called her, but they didn't even call her Lindsay anymore. They called her by like a different name that's part of their alien culture. Whatever it was, let's say it was like Kara or whatever. They were like, Kara, it's time for you to come home. And she was like, my name is Lindsay, right? So they didn't even give her like, it was like totally new life. And the dad explained, you need to totally let go of your past. This is your life now. Nothing before this even counts. So when they got back to Alpha Quadrant, they probably just told her family she died. Like whatever the real story was for the real Lindsay, that's probably exactly what they said. Because can you imagine telling them like, yeah, she died, but then she was co-opted by this other alien species, but then she was turned into an alien and now she lives with them and she's sort of alive, but it's not really her. And you also can't visit her because she's in the Delta Quadrant. Sorry. Like, what's even the point of telling that information? When Grace says, Harry loved her so much, he never mentioned her before or again. Just like every woman who he's ever loved has never mentioned him before or ever again. She should have been the one who died when the doctor freaked out. Oh, that would have been crazy. I think there was okay, so there was the episode you're talking about is the episode that where like the doctor, they reprogrammed him because he was like falling to pieces because of that one patient who didn't survive and he like couldn't handle it. But what I was thinking, so that would have been a good tie-in. But what I was thinking when you said that was what is that episode called where it's the episode where we've got the two Voyagers in the same space and time and the Vidians are attacking. And it's the one where Naomi Wildman is born, but she dies in one Voyager. She lives in the other Voyager. Harry Kim is sucked out of a like hole in the hull in one Voyager, but he lives in the other Voyager. Do you remember that episode? Well, in that episode, there's a scene where the doctor runs into, and I think these are different episodes, but I could be getting this wrong, but he's in a Jeffries tube and he's like telling everybody to like, come on, so he can close off this section because it's going to be vented into space or there's holes or who knows what. And he realizes that the people aren't going to make it. And he just closes the hole and shuts it while the people are like running to the Jeffries tube and they die. Right. And he's like, onward, people. And then he's like freaking out about it because understandably so, this is like a horrible decision to have to make, but he had to choose either, you know, I keep this open and we all die, or I close it and just they die. And so it would have been interesting if Lindsay had been any of those people. Or even back in the first episode in Caretaker, a whole bunch of people died when the Caretaker brought the ship into the Delta Quadrant. She could have been one of those people as well. And then the backstory could have been they went to the academy together. They were so excited to come to Voyager together. You know what I mean? They could have, there's a few ways they could have done it, but I think this was fine. The way that they just kind of like sprinkled her in with flashbacks. I think it was fine. This was my mom's favorite episode. Aw, I love that. I love that this is her favorite episode. It's a really sweet episode. Even if it's not super memorable. Okay, now to the next episode on the list. Season 7, Episode 3, Drive. Paris enters Voyager into an interspecies shuttle race, but the event turns deadly when a group of rebels uses it as cover for a terrorist attack. Harry falls for one of the racers, while it looks like Tom and Lana's relationship is falling apart. So this episode, I really like Drive. I think it's fun. It's exciting. The tension between Tom and B'Elanna is a little bit like too much for me. It's like they're constant back and forth, and just seeing B'Elanna being so like unhappy and feeling so neglected. It's just like it strikes a chord in me. But I really love this episode, and this is like our last in the series of Harry and his lost loves, because he really liked this random alien lady, this alien racer lady. He just, you know, he was like so excited to fly on the ship with her. And because unfortunately, sadly, her co-pilot, his console exploded in his face and he wasn't able to fly. So Harry was like, I'll be your partner and I'll fly with you so we can still do the race. Forget Tom and B'Elanna, because originally he was flying with them, right? He was like, I'll fly with you. So she's like, cool. And then while they're flying, and he's all like, oh, I'm getting some special time with this girl. Suddenly his console blows up in his face, but he's able to like duck out of the way in time. And then he's like, that's suspicious. Come to find out that she's behind the console exploding because she does not want her ship in the race because she has planted a bomb at the end of the race. So she's not trying to have her ship get to the end so it won't blow up. And he's like, why would you do this? Why are you sabotaging these like peaceful, fun, like races? And turns out she's super xenophobic. And she says, not everybody likes mixing like you do. And we don't think people should mix. We think all the species should be separated. And so we're going to just blow up this whole thing to teach people a lesson about like not coming together and mixing or whatever. So it turns out she's kind of like the worst person in the history of people, or the worst alien in the history of her species for sure. And she was very good at hiding that because she didn't seem like that kind of a person at all in the beginning, right? And so again, it's like womp womp, right? Harry was like, oh, here I thought you were just like this, beautiful, dangerous woman who loves flying really fast, and actually you're a terrorist. It's like, it just can't catch a break with this one. But in the end, he figures it out, and they don't defuse the bomb. The bomb totally explodes. She actually ended up putting the bomb on Tom and B'Elanna's ship as opposed to leaving it at the finish race. But Tom and B'Elanna's ship were like the fastest in the race. They were going to win. So when they crossed the finish line, they were going to blow everything up. But because Tom and B'Elanna were bickering, they had stopped flying so they could like have an argument. And the bomb is like ticking down and they don't know about it. So Harry's able to send like some Morse code, classic Trek, send some Morse code that somehow says there is a bomb on board. He could say that in Morse code. And Tom and B'Elanna fly into some asteroid field or something like that. And they like eject the core, which is where the bomb was planted or something. And they like kind of drift away. And somehow they're not blown to bits. And then they get married. Yay. That part's really sweet. But I love this episode. I love this episode because it's just like kind of it's action, it's mystery. And then in the end, there's a secret wedding, which is just really lovely because we don't actually see the wedding. We just see the honeymoon. Anyways, this to me just is kind of quintessential Harry. He always picks the person who, like, the worst person for him. And it's something that Tom, like, has this running joke with him about throughout the seasons where he's like, oh, at least she's not a ghost. At least she's not dead. At least she's not a Borg drone, right? Like, every time he falls in love, it's not the person for him. Okay, I'm going to check the chat, and then we're going to go to the next episode on the list. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, I love the Starfleet black and white race uniforms. Me too. Aren't those great? And Harry truly does something promotion worthy by saving a ton of lives. Thank you. Thank you. Like, saving a ton of lives with freaking Morse code, which he like taps out through the panel or some stuff. So yeah, this was definitely a promotion worthy moment. Cindy says, it's so stressful to see Tom and B'Elanna argue. It really is, which is kind of funny because like they're a TV couple, but it is stressful. Maybe it's the way that they argue is very stressful because it's so accurate to real life, right? And of course, Harry falls for the girl. Yes. Wingrace says, yes, this is one of my top variant uniforms. It's so great. Cindy says, at least she's not a hollow character. Not a hollow character, but not a great person either. So he's really not winning here. No worries, PS2 Chipper. Happy to have you here. Okay, now let's do the next episode on the list, which honestly, I forgot that this episode existed until I was preparing for today's conversation. Season 7, Episode 8, Nightingale. While on an away mission, Harry takes command of an alien ship in need of a leader, finally getting a taste of real command. However, he quickly realizes that leadership is much harder than it looks, especially when the crew isn't telling the full truth. In the end, he does help them complete their mission, and he gains a new respect for command, but he still does not get a promotion. So, yeah. On the list of the many, many forgettable episodes is this episode, which I was like, wait, what happened in that episode? And even in like going over it again, I was still kind of like, what happened in this episode? So the big idea is Harry did take command. And the shuttle was up to something shady, but he helped them with something shady because it was for the greater good, whatever. And in the end, he was just like, wow, being in command is really hard. Okay, but like, he doesn't have to go from ensign to captain, right? It doesn't have to be like a lower deck situation where you go from ensign to like lieutenant junior grade to like freaking first officer, which is ridiculous, right? He doesn't have to have that big of a leap, but he could do more than ensign. So I don't know. This, again, like with the things that he's done that earn a promotion, I don't know if this earns a promotion, but just goes to show that he has some leadership potential. And we saw a bunch of times where he was like doing the night shift. He was like the captain for the night shift or whatever. And he was all excited about it. And it's just like, this shows he has this enthusiasm for command. That means he should have gotten more opportunities, in my opinion. That's really all I have to say about this episode. Let's check the next episode on the list, which I actually do love. Season 3, Episode 3, The Chute. Harry and Tom are wrongly imprisoned in a brutal alien prison with no way out and a device in their heads that increases aggression. As they fight to survive, Harry tries to keep them both sane while searching for an escape. Meanwhile, Janeway stages a prison break using Neelix's ship. This is probably my favorite Tom and Harry episode. Yeah, probably of all of Voyager. This is my favorite Tom and Harry episode. It's very uncomfortable. It's hard to watch just because like it's terrifying to be trapped in this creepy prison where everyone's trying to kill you. But what I love is the way that their friendship, like I love their friendship. Tom and Harry and Data and Geordi, like those friendships I just love. I could watch all day long. I just think they just stand the test of time. And in this episode, when they get to this prison, the only way that they get food or like supplies is that chute opens up from time to time and like a small handful of supplies are thrown down the chute. And that's enough for everybody. Like, it's just like the chute opens, some supplies are dropped, like some food is dropped, and then it's closed. And so everybody has like fight at the chute over the little scraps of food. And like, they're literally fighting, like they're murdering each other left and right. They have all kinds of shanks and stuff like that so that they can take the food because there's only so much there. In addition, anytime a new prisoner comes down, they like beat the crap out of the prisoner and steal all their stuff. And so they find this out the hard way because as soon as they come down the chute, you know, Harry gets beat up, Tom's trying to like, you know, he gets knifed and all this crazy stuff. And on top of that, so Harry and Tom get rescued by this like really scary prisoner who everybody else is afraid of. And for whatever reason, he takes them under his wing and he's like, I'm protecting them. So then people stop messing with them. And Harry's like, I think we can get out because I'm an engineer and I'm going to MacGyver the heck out of this. We're getting out of this situation. So he's trying to make this device. And so the guy's like, all right, as long as you take me with you, like I will protect you. Then the guy writes this manifesto about like what he believes is really going on. And he's like, the truth is they're trying to make us aggressive. They're trying to make us angry. This is all a conspiracy. And of course, Harry's like, what are you talking about? Right? It's just like, there is no conspiracy. You're crazy. Blah. And so then the guy is like, get out. Like, you're no longer under my protection because you did not respect my manifesto. So Harry's like, fine, we don't need you. So him and Tom are like over in some other part of the prison underneath some cardboard box. And he's trying to make this device. So they're scavenging all kinds of stuff that they can find, little pieces of metal, hangers, whatever they can find to make this little device that's supposed to open up the chute. Because the chute it's closed down at the bottom and only opens when like stuff drops in, people or food. And so he wants to like pry it open with this like little device and then climb up the chute to escape. So he's trying to do this. And then Tom is like sabotaging it because Tom's losing his mind and he doesn't know what's going on. And it's just all these things. And at one point, Harry's about to like beat Tom to death with a pipe because he's getting so frustrated. He's so wound up. Anyways, the device works. They end up climbing up the chute. And when they get to the top, they look out and they just see space because it turns out this entire prison is floating in a ship in space, which nobody knew until this point. They all thought they were on a planet. So if only this was a planet or even an installation on a planet, they could have gotten to that door and then gotten that one open and then, you know, figured out some kind of other prison break. But now that they see they're in space, they know they're really screwed. There is no way out, which is like, this is like, so all of this is terrifying. Like this concept, I wouldn't make it. I wouldn't make it. Yeah, I wouldn't make it. But so the reason why it's on this list is I love Tom and Harry. Like I love their friendship. And I love that even though Harry was like about to beat Tom to death because he broke the device and he was like, we needed that to escape. You know, even though that was like a moment, once he was able to calm down, he actually went to Tom's defense because later on, somebody else was like trying to stab Tom or kill him or something. And then Harry came back with his pipe and he was like, this man's my friend. Nobody touches him. And he's like swinging the pipe and stuff. And like, they're about to have a big old showdown. And it's Tom on the ground It's Harry with one pipe, and it's a whole bunch of people all around him, a whole bunch of angry dudes, and one guy with a big sharp knife. And Harry's like, bring it. Like, he's about to fight everybody. And then the chute opens and they're like, someone's coming. So they all run to go like pillage whoever's coming through. And that's where you see it at the end of the clip where it ends up being Janeway and Tuvok. And this is why I freaking love Janeway. The second she hits the ground, she stands up and is like, like she just starts shooting. She didn't even give a warning. There was no backup. There was no put your hands where I can see them. There was none of that. She just was like, boom, anybody else want some? Like, I got this on wide beam. I'm taking everybody out. And she's just like, where's Tom and Harry? That's who I came for. And then, I mean, it's just like, oh, I love Janeway so much. And then Harry's like, we're here. And they save them and they get out and they climb back up into Neelix's ship and they escape. And somehow the aliens don't like chase them or whatever. Maybe whatever weapons they had, they couldn't go against Voyager, even if they did chase Neelix's ship. Anyways, I freaking love this episode. And at the very end, they're walking through the hallway, Tom and Harry, and they've been all like cleaned up. They've been to the doctor. They've got clean clothes and all of that. And Harry's feeling really bad. He's feeling some kind of way about the fact that he almost murdered his best friend, in a rage. And by the way, the doctor discovered that whole manifesto about the prison guards just wanting, there were no guards, but the people who put them in prison just wanted them to like all tear each other to pieces was true, that they were really inserted with devices that amped up their aggression so that they could tear each other to pieces, so that it'd be less for the people who are imprisoning people to worry about, right? Less prisoners to worry about, which is awful, right? These people are terrible. Anyways, they're walking in the hall and Tom's like, oh, let's go to, let's go to the galley and let's get this and let's get that. Because when they were in prison, they were fantasizing about all these delicious meals they were going to eat. And so Tom's just like, yeah, let's go. A chocolate cake and steak and all these things. And Harry's like, hey, can we talk about the fact that I almost murdered you? Like, I feel bad about that. Don't you hate me? And Tom's like, wait, when did that happen? I don't even remember that. So he doesn't even remember like that moment when Harry was like about to bash him over the head with the pipe. He said, you know what I remember? I remember you standing over me and saying, this guy's my friend. No one touches him. And I'm going to remember that for a long time. And it's like, I get choked up just thinking about it. Like, that scene kills me. It's so beautiful. It's like, I don't know. I just love their friendship. So that's why it's one of my favoriteest episodes. We have one episode left on the list. So I'm going to check the chat and then hit that last episode. Cindy says, this is one of my favorite bromances. When Grace says, yay, a rare episode that remembers Neelix has one extra ship on board. So Neelix's ship, when they first find Neelix back in episode 1, they put his ship in a cargo hold somewhere. And then they mention it from time to time. Like a couple times early on, Neelix is like, I don't like what you're doing, Captain. Just let me and Cass off at the next stop or whatever. And at one point, she just checks him and she's like, look, you're on the ship or you're not. If we let you off, like when we get out of this, if we let you off the ship, you can go back onto your ship, but you cannot come back. Like, don't talk to me anymore. And then he kind of like gets it together. But yeah, they almost never talk about Neelix's ship. And then at the very end, Neelix ends up to go be with some other Talaxians. So presumably he takes his ship for that too. So maybe we see his ship like 3 times in all of Voyager. I don't know. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says the ultimate 47 reference. I killed 47 defenders at Aquatari. 47. I don't remember that at all. But of course, I did not know about the whole 47 thing. Probably also the best bromance bonding episode in Trek. Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Well, if you're saying that, I'm going to trust you because I'm like going through the files in my mind, but you've seen way more Trek than I have. Yeah, that episode was absolutely brutal. Yes. Neelix's ship is a space bathtub, perhaps. Perhaps it's not quite that large. Okay, now let's go to the last episode on the list. Season 5, Episode 6, Timeless. The crew is ecstatic to try new slipstream drive technology to get them home faster. Unfortunately, there's a malfunction and Voyager crashes on an icy planet, killing everyone instantly. 15 years later, Chute and Kim, the sole survivors, reactivate the Doctor and use 7 of 9's implants to send a message back in time to her. Kim ultimately succeeds by preventing the disaster, saving the crew, and changing history. So this is my favorite Harry Kim focused episode of all time. It's one of my favorite episodes of all of Voyager. And it's one of the few Harry Kim episodes that I think really do him justice. You know, it's not really about him having this really sad love affair with somebody or something like that. Like, this is legitimate. Like, his contributions are legitimate in this episode. So they're trying the slipstream drive that they got from, what's that guy's name? What's this guy's name? So there was this guy. Wow, I cannot believe I'm blanking on this guy's name. Well, okay. So there was a war between the Borg and Species 8472. And Voyager helped turn the tides of that war. They helped the Borg push Species 8472 back into fluidic space in exchange for safe passage through their space. But there was another planet that had many other planets that were affected by this, but there was this one other planet that was totally decimated by the Borg right after this decision. And one of the survivors from that decimation, because he wasn't on the planet at the time, he was like on a ship or whatever, he comes back to get revenge against Voyager. And he tricks them. He creates this ship and he claims that he like messes with the few messages that they've gotten from home, but they weren't able to decode. He like has this super advanced technology where he messes with the message and he makes it seem like the admirals back on Earth sent Voyager a special ship. And the ship has a slipstream drive technology that will get them home in no time. Like, the drive is so fast, they'll get home in like 1 year instead of 70. And so he's trying to convince them to abandon Voyager and to get onto this ship so they can get home faster. And they're all for it at first. They're all like, yeah, this is cool. Like, let's go, let's go. Janeway's a little bit like, from the very beginning, she's like, what's wrong with this picture? We get this message from home. We can't decode it. And suddenly we meet this alien who's like a genius in languages and can help us perfectly decode it. We get this ship that sends us home overnight. What's wrong with this picture? And Tuvok's like, maybe you're just being, paranoid. But it does seem kind of implausible. So she's already feeling kind of sus. And then I think it is Harry who discovers that this ship is not what it seems. He's like doing some scans or repairs or whatnot. And then he finds out that part of it's like cloaked. And it's not really cloaked. It turns out that this advanced technology has some kind of, it's like holographic, but to the 10th level. So it's like it can generate new material, whatever. So all of it's fake though. And so his master plan to get revenge was to get the entire crew of Voyager onto this new ship. And then instead of taking them home, he was going to take them back to his homeworld, which is now a Borg planet. And he was going to get everybody assimilated to like teach them a lesson because all of his people are now gone. They're all Borg drones. So he felt like Voyager should experience this as well, right? Like, they can't go through life without having any consequences to their actions, which fair. And honestly, somebody coming back for revenge, we should see that more often. Like, the only reason we don't see it more often is because a lot of these aliens are one-offs. We never see them again. They just do whatever they do. They never come back again, except for Seska and the Kazon. Like, we don't see them again. But if they had the ability to be seen again, I think a lot of people would be coming back for revenge, right? So anyways, his plan does not work. But what they were doing when they were looking at this new ship is they were like, this slipstream technology is pretty cool, and we don't want to leave Voyager behind. So maybe we can like upgrade our ship to have the same technology. So they had upgraded Voyager to have a slipstream drive as well. And the idea was that like the new ship that the Admiral sent would go through the slipstream and like open the way, and then Voyager would like ride behind it. But it turns out that was all a lie. And right, this guy was trying to kill them. And he ended up kidnapping 7 of 9 and Janeway, but he didn't get the rest of the crew. And that's when he does his bad guy monologue and we find out the truth. And Janeway's just like, well, sorry, but we couldn't have known. We didn't know. And he was like, that's no excuse. Y'all getting assimilated. But as he's flying through the slipstream, Voyager comes through the slipstream. They like activate this, technology that they've installed, but they haven't tested. They activate it all. They chase after them. And at the very last second, they're able to transport 7 and Janeway off the ship. And then they like curve the slipstream to take them back to where they came. And unfortunately, that guy whose name I'm totally blanking on, Arturis, thank you. Arturis gets assimilated in the end, which is so sad. Like, I mean, it's not like I want him to get revenge on Voyager, but I also don't want him to be assimilated. And you just like the look on his face when the Borg are like, we are the Borg, you will be assimilated. And he disabled his ship so that way nobody could change course. Like, Janeway couldn't talk him out of it. Like, this ship was going to be assimilated. It was not going to be able to escape. So it ended up being his own coffin, which is like so heartbreaking. Yeah. But anyways, Like poor Arturus. But anyway, so that's how Voyager got this technology. But after this, they were like, oh, we can't use it. It's too dangerous. Like, oh, we can't trust it. But Harry was like being instant eager and being super enthusiastic. Maybe we can still use this technology. There's a way we can use it to get home. So they tried it again. And they found out that they needed something in front of the ship to actually help guide the ship through the slipstream, because there was like all these variants, whatever, that they had to like navigate. And so Harry and Chakotay were going to be in the shuttle in front of Voyager, and they were going to be sending back all these course corrections to make sure that they both stayed in the stream, because the shuttle's like tiny and the ship's super big. So they want to make sure like all the subspace eddies or whatever don't tear the ship apart or push it off course. So that went terribly wrong. And all the corrections that Harry Kim kept sending back were not helping the situation. So that's why Voyager went off course and crash landed onto that planet, into the glacier, and everybody died. So what was it, like 30 years later, 20, 30 years later, Harry Kim and Chakotay come back, and they have some like thing from the Borg, which apparently they can talk to Borg in the past, because the Borg can do anything, which is nuts. And he sends the right course corrections back to Seven, but in the past, but then that doesn't work either. So he's so frustrated that he cannot save Voyager. And the Doctor is just like, look, if you can't send the right course corrections, so be it. What else can you do? And then Harry's like, well, maybe I'll just send corrections that just cancel the slipstream altogether. Like, just forget it. And so that's what he does. He sends it back to his past self. Seven gets the corrections, and the whole slipstream just collapses. I don't remember how close they came. I feel like maybe like 10 years. It shaved 10 years off their journey or something. I don't remember how many, but it got them closer, like a lot closer. But then they realized, like, this is too dangerous. We can't use this technology anymore. We can't get a hang of it. And it's too likely for something to go wrong. And future Harry Kim sent a message back to present Harry Kim to tell him, like, hey, just so you know, I sent back the corrections just like you were going to, and everybody died. And so this is me changing history for everyone because I couldn't live with myself. So don't do that. Right. So Harry got this message and was like, okay, I'm on team. Let's not do the slipstream. However, can I just point out that the fact that Harry Kim was like pioneering the slipstream drive is one reason why he should have been promoted. And also the fact that he built the astrometrics lab with 7 of 9 is another reason why he should have been promoted. But that's aside. So in this episode, I love that he is like, he's the problem, but he's also like the solution, right? And even though things did not go according to plan, they were able to shave several years off their journey through his enthusiasm and like his passion. So yay, Harry Kim. Okay, I'm going to check the chat and then we're going to be done for the day. Nadia says, oh wait, where'd it go? Wait, hold on. Everything jumped. Give me a second. There we go. Nadia says, I love O'Brien and Julian as far as bromances go. Yeah. I was going to say, so for this one, so I don't know a lot of Deep Space Nine, right? Because that's like a thing on my list. But I did watch an episode with Julian and Garrick, and I don't know how long their friendship lasts or goes, or if that's a thing from the beginning of the show to the end. I don't know. But I was just watching this, like I just watched a couple episodes in the middle. And I thought they had a really interesting friendship. They were like frenemies. I was like, are they friends or do they hate each other? I couldn't tell. And so, yeah, I need to watch more Deep Space Nine to find the answer to that question. Wingrace says, speaking of Geordi, we get Captain LaForge. Yes, we get Captain LaForge, and he's got those cool contacts, which are like his new visor, which if you notice, he stopped doing the visor thing from the show because in reality, even though the visor helped Geordi, a blind character, see, the visor made LeVar Burton completely blind. So whenever he wore the visor, he would just run into stuff and hit things. And, he's all covered in bruises. And so after they like finished, like when they wrapped the show, and I don't even know if he had the visor on in all the movies, but he was just like, I'm done with that. Like, find another way. So they did those really cool contacts, which I think look dope. Like, they look so cool. They even had them in, I think he even had those contacts in All Good Things, like in the series finale for TNG. But yeah, we get to see Captain LaForge, which is so great. Yes, we get to see Harry Kim be kind of like bitter, which is not something you would ever equate Harry Kim with because he's so like happy-go-lucky and silver lining. But this episode, you definitely see him being like hardened and bitter and like mad at the world because it didn't all work out, which had to be really fun to play something so different. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, great episode, but it's all Harry's fault. Yes, it was Harry's fault that they crashed, but also Harry's fault that they survived, right? And they got a little bit closer to home. Yes. So Crazy Normie YT is quoting Arturis when he says, you had a choice. That whole scene was like, I still remember watching that and just being like, he's not wrong. I don't know. What do you guys think about Arturis? I think his whole plan to get revenge was kind of like, I think it could have worked. Like, it just was a little too perfect. If he was a little sneakier, it could have worked. I totally understand he wanted revenge, and I understand why he wanted revenge. And I understand why Janeway felt like, I'm not going to let you kill me. Like, I'm not going to be assimilated. Sorry. But also, like, yeah, I feel like Janeway should be like, yeah, we did. We messed you guys up. I had no idea that was going to happen. I'm so sorry that happened. And that was a consequence of what we did. There was lots of consequences of what we did. And I also feel like Janeway would add, if I had it to do over, I'd do it the same way, because she would. Cindy says, it's amazing how Harry evolved to not care what people think about him in this episode. Yes, after like the whole time, he's just, that's like all he cares about, right? Randall says, if we can't have him promoted, let's have him irresponsibly mess with time again. PS2 Chipper says, if I'm captain, I'm just going to fire during the bad guy's monologue. So the only reason they couldn't fire during the bad guy's monologue is because they didn't have any weapons and they were behind a force field. So Janeway and 7 of 9 were behind like this little force field bubble, and Arturis had the whole rest of the ship, and he was talking all this trash, and they were just like, you got to get us out of here. And she's all like, 7, can you get through this force field? And she's like, no, so that was the only reason they didn't fire. But I feel like if she had a weapon, she might have fired. Janeway, yeah. Or even 7. 7 is so quick to be like, I am bored. Like I think they both would have like run up on him if they could have, hence the force field. Okay, so PS2 Chipper says, okay, the moment we've all been waiting for. Harry Kim is a captain in Star Trek Online. Yay for Harry Kim. So he jumps a whole bunch of levels. And I bet he's a great captain too. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for coming. For all of you who are watching live, thank you for everybody who's watching on the replay. Join us next week when we will be talking about the best Doctor episodes. So hopefully these are better, more beloved episodes than this week's examples. All right, see you next time.